right. So we are here with another episode of the Black on Black Education podcast. Have been looking forward to this interview. And as always, we will let our guests let us know who she is, what she does, and exactly why she does it.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Noemi Pavone, and I am the CEO and founder of the Pavone Leadership Firm. We are a national educational and leadership coaching firm, and we serve districts, nonprofits, corporations, and their management teams all across the country, particularly in strategic planning, in developing their leaders and their teams, as well as program design. I do this work mostly in education because I'm obsessed with creating spaces of liberation for children, but also for adults. And that's why I do this work. So, and it's always exciting to see people experience and people, individuals, meaning, and teams really experience those breakthrough moments that totally transform their productivity and how they show up to the work. And so I'm just super excited. Thank you, Jamal, for having me here today and ready to jump in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I mean, let's start at leadership and why you looked at leadership as one of the more important things to help people with in education. Is it missing? What brought you to that as a method of helping to serve?
Great question. I think that an organization and what happens within a school or a company largely reflects leadership, right? The leadership practice. People will do as you do, not as you say.
Mhm.
And that goes to the culture that is established in a place, the clarity, the organization, all of that. It really begins with leadership. And so for me, that work I started as a classroom teacher. And, I became, like I said, obsessed with just creating a place where kids were so excited to learn and grow, and where I was able to see things that maybe they weren't able to see in themselves. And when they were able to really leverage their strengths and their value add, it really changed the game for them so much that I was curious to see, well, what if we could create a whole school this way? What would it take, right? And then the reality is that in order to create a school like that, you then have to create a space for the adults in the building, the teachers themselves. They are leaders. They're leaders within the classroom. And when you can create a space where they feel liberated to bring, their some autonomy to the workspace, their love, their passion, when they have opportunities to master their craft and feel successful, it really changes the game for kids. And so, to the question, leadership is where it all begins, and your ability to be able to serve other people will largely reflect the results and the transformation that happens in a school community.
So, I mean, I definitely love what you said there because you in particular you talked about the strengths of youth, and I've always had love hate relationship with education in that it becomes so synonymous with school, and it's really not what education is like that
Mm.
this is where we go to educate our kids, but the idea of education is bringing out the best
Yes.
within these youth, and the best is helping them to find and determine their strengths. So I love how you applied leadership to being like that's the job of the leader at the district level, at the school level, at the classroom level, and then down to students and helping them become kind of self leaders, and in the idea of taking a leadership approach in how they approach learning. And so it seems to me sometimes that things get in the way. And because you're now, we're working at an organizational level, maybe you can give us some perspective, because there's leadership that then goes above the district level, like the state, and the federal government, and all of the various different assessments and the things that we say schools have to do. How do you find those? Let's give them a chance. How do you find that they help, and how do you find that they hurt a leader's ability to do the best possible job for students?
Are you saying in terms of certain systems and structures that are set in place? Okay.
Like
Yes.
I'm in New York, so the state of New York Board of Education saying this is what you have to do, and now you're a leader and you get to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
and say
yeah.
what you're going to do. So
Yeah, so I think that when you are entrusted as a leader to disrupt the status quo,
Mm.
particularly in urban education, but also outside of education, if we're really trying to change the whole education game, it's going to take some courage, right? And it doesn't mean that you're totally flipping over the table and like saying, no, I'm doing my own thing to everything, but it does
You can't
mean,
flip over the table?
I'm okay with flipping over the table. I have flipped some myself, but like it really comes down to your willingness to be courageous in the face of unpopular decisions. And I'll give you some examples because I know you said that how does it help or how does it take away?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so oftentimes there is a lot of external expectations that come in, right? You got to do this test. You got to tell your parents this. You got to do X, Y, and Z. And for you as a leader, you got to be able to strike the balance. What is it that first and foremost, I'm not here to serve the Board of Education. I am here to serve this community. That is why I was hired. I was hired to serve these students, to serve my teachers, to serve my parents, and that is going to be front and center. And I believe that with a lot of leaders, particularly in this pandemic, they're stuck with the bureaucracy of I got to do this and I got to do this. And a lot of people fear for their jobs as well. Right. But at the end of the day, for me and the leaders that we work with, if you can come back to the people that you serve, because that is your number one job, is to serve those people, then the rest is will come, and I'll give you some specific examples, like, some schools saying, I don't know, what are some procedures or policies that people throw out there, like I can't think of anything in my head. Well, let's say testing, for example, right?
Yeah,
Testing was a huge thing during
that's a
the
good one.
pandemic. All right, so testing is a huge thing during the pandemic. And so here you have the state assessments that you got to take. You can't change necessarily the fact that the state assessments have to change. And really, here's where it hurts your leaders, or here's where it hurts schools, is when we censor the test and we don't censor students. Why? Because you keep hearing from up above, test, scores, scores. Then you start to communicate test, scores, that we forget the essence of why we joined the work in the first place. And the essence of the work, we have to go back to the why. And it's students and it's parents. And if my kids are not well right now, after the 6 months that where schools have been back in place and we're going on vacation now or whatever, there's a lot of people who are like, there has been an uptick, an uprise in misbehavior in students. Just we underestimated how much socio-emotional support our students would get, and so what are schools going to do about that now? Right? There's a lot of people that have the pressure, the external pressures of, oh my gosh, we got to get all these tests out, we got to prepare our kids, and I am concerned. That it concerns me that we are going to go full force come January to prepare kids for tests, that we are going to miss the very people in front of us who missed 2 years of having those social relationships, of being able to talk about their feelings in person. You know what I mean? There's just a lot there. And so again, to just circling back to your question, it really takes a leader to be courageous. It takes a leader being super clear on who they are, and understanding that they are a value add, so that they can lead with confidence, even in the midst of unpopular decisions. At the end of the day, your community, if you're tapped in with them, they're going to back you up, and collectively as a force, you all can advocate for what you all need.
True story. True story. I mean, I remember the beginning of the pandemic, and conversations were had, and you, like me, were a Clubhouse fan. I used to do. Are you still on Clubhouse?
I don't go on Clubhouse very very often anymore.
Yeah. I
I
quit
wish
too.
I could, but
It
schedule
became
doesn't allow.
yeah. It became too much, but it was fun while it lasted. I'll
Right.
go back. I'll go back one day. But a lot of the conversation was that if we go back to school the way that we left, then shame on us. And it's seeming, and more conversations I have, I'm like, damn, shame on us. We're that there's a lot of coming back to the status quo. Inertia is a crazy thing in terms of getting out of it and being able to really move on. And I know people are trying. I just I hope we can find ways to see. What are you seeing in terms of teacher leader interaction right now? Like how things are flowing, because the teachers are the ones that are directly in front of the students actually. So obviously they need to play their role, but it's only going to work if leaders and the teachers are kind of getting along. If people are walking around in the classroom, stand that person, you know what I mean? Eventually the students see that and are not served well
Yeah.
by that. What are you seeing in terms of those relationships right now?
So let me first start with what we're seeing with teachers, right? Because what we're seeing with teachers, well, first off, with teachers and leaders, is burnout. And when burnout comes, you start to see turnover. And there has already been a teacher shortage. And right now we are experiencing the largest teacher turnover ever in history. And we are also seeing a huge leader principal turnover as well. Principals are quitting now, this second semester, and there's a lot of external pressures in place, right? In terms of teacher and leader interactions, I believe that the leaders who have seen their teachers as a critical part of this process, and who have leaned into and valued their input along the way, the leaders who have been willing to say, you know what, I hear you guys, I know it's hard, I'm going to do this for you, but like that give and take, right? Hey, if you can do this, I'm going to make sure I'm working for you, like those leaders who are present and who are seeing people as people first. I think that's going a long way. The leaders who were really never present, or were like more of the office leaders, right? The leaders who have been very used to the technical manager type
Right,
of style of leadership, they're
right,
struggling right now, because you are wanting technical work to happen, when right now you are really being called to be a transformational leader, where you are able to cultivate and create a space where people feel seen, valued, heard, supported. And if that is not in place, we are also seeing schools, leadership teams that are struggling amongst themselves, conflict. There's a lot of leaders who became a principal in the middle of the pandemic. You really never got to build a relationship with your teachers
right,
if you weren't super intentional about it.
right.
So that's bringing on its own thing. So the leaders who, again, see people first and have brought teachers along their decision making process with them, you're seeing that there's a lot more of investment there. And the leaders who have not been willing to listen to teachers, the leaders that are not clear on who they are, that are doubting themselves, and that's where you see, the conflict come in. If people don't trust you as a leader, they're not going to follow you. They're going to be frustrated with you.
And it seems that it becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, if you don't do what it takes to maintain healthy relationships with teachers, they burn out. Then they take it out on the students. Students are like, yeah, I don't really like this. The academic performance doesn't improve in the way that people wanted to prove. So now you're pissed off, again, and the circle and the cycle continues. One, and I know a lot of school leadership probably don't want to hear this, but something that I've heard recently, and I don't remember exactly where it was from, was the idea that every administrator who can, like a principal, AP, that they should have at least one class. They should teach at least one class, so they never forget what it's like to be in that role of a teacher. Now, I know that they're busy, and that would be challenged to get just logistically. But what's your thought on that?
I don't think it hurts at all. I actually think, until you can sit in that seat, it really changes the game, Until when the pandemic hit, if you weren't sitting behind that Zoom, working it and trying to learn how to engage the adults in your building around collaborating and learning and all of that,
Hmm.
or doing it with kids, it's tough. It's tough to really lead from that place. I do think that leaders have to have touch points with their kids, whether it's you're teaching a class or whether that, you're going. There were points in the year where I taught character classes. There were points in the year where I didn't teach character classes, but I went to sit with my kids. I went to sit in the cafeteria with them. It was on my calendar. It was just to build relationships with kids, yeah. And so I do recommend it, particularly for the leaders that are feeling maybe like disconnected from, there's like a disconnect between their students and them and the relationships. Like, I knew every kid's name in my school building,
Right.
and those relationships go a long, long way.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about, well, first, I hate doing the two-part questions, but it's the way I think, so I'll do it anyway. I do want to hear a little bit more about like what made you decide to make the transition into,
Sure.
from leading a school to saying, you know what, I'm going to kick off the Pavone firm.
Yep.
And anybody who is anybody in the teachergram realm, they know about the Pavone firm. So, also share a little bit about exactly what the Pavone Forum is doing on a day-to-day basis. Maybe some of the specific programs that you guys run.
Okay, yes, absolutely. So the question that you asked is to talk a little bit about my transition from principalship and then why I went into creating the Pavone firm. Is that right?
Yep, yep. And then just some of the specifics of the Pavone firm. Like I
What we
saw as I looked on the website, like I think it was Boss. I forgot exactly, but
Yeah. Okay, the programs we have. Yeah, I'll talk about those as well. Okay, so I love the work of a school principal. I am a former turnaround high school principal, where the school that I took over was in South Carolina. It was a school that was at the bottom of the county. It was under enrolled. I remember the first time I walked through the school hallways, this was during my principal interview. We did a tour of the building, and I remember looking at classrooms, and it reminded me of a scene on like the movie Lean on Me,
Mm,
where I looked into the classrooms, and I don't recall a single classroom teaching. They had headphones on, they were playing cards, sitting at the desk. And I remember really writing down, before I took on this position, specifically the school that I would take over. Needless to say, fast forward, I was like, this is a school I want to take over, because I believe that the gifts and the strengths that I had were what the school needed. And so we went to a waiting list. And it was really because I have a gift for, like I said, I'm obsessed with creating spaces of liberation for people, where when you enter that place, you're seeing that place as the assets. You're seeing the assets that that community has. And then you figure out every single way possible to leverage the assets of the community, the assets that students have, that teachers have, etc. And it got to the place where students were like, you got to come. They were going on Snapchat and Instagram talking to people about coming to the school. We, of course, like things like ACT scores increased by 500% in 2 years.
mm,
To me, what was powerful was that there was maybe like 3 clubs on campus, and clubs increased to like 30 different clubs, right? Where the animation clubs, chess clubs, dance clubs. I mean, you name it. They just came up with whatever it was that they felt, wherever it was that they felt like they wanted to add value. And in that process, there were so many amazing things that happened, and it was really, really hard work, but I loved the work. However, there was a lot of undermining. There was a lot of bureaucracy. And now I'm able to articulate exactly. It took me a while to be really able to articulate like what exactly was happening to me as a leader, because I almost blinded myself to everything that was happening, because I only cared about like whatever it takes, do whatever it takes for the kids, right? Like, I was working 60 hours plus, no, like 70 hours a week. I started a night school program, and I'll talk about like why some of these things happened. And it was a pretty big injustice that was happening in my school community, and I did not receive the support that I needed as a school principal. And I knew my value add, And because I knew my value add, I could not compromise the calling on my life, that I had the calling to create these spaces of liberation with adults, with the adults in the building. Because when the adults in the building can do it, it's a domino effect to the kids. And
I have to imagine that a lot of this had to do, with the adults to turn around like that. The only way to do
100%.
that is you inspired, people. So like if
Yeah, it
I
was,
want I want to understand that part too.
yep. So it was really about training up the leadership team, finding the right people on the bus. There were some people that were the wrong people on the bus. They either opted out or I helped them find the right seat for them. And some of them, they just had to go because whoever worked in the school building, one thing that anyone who knows me is that I'm not willing to compromise our school culture. Like like everybody in this building has to believe that every single kid can learn,
Was
right?
this a
Like
public school or a charter
this
school?
was a public school, it's a public charter.
Got it.
Everyone in the building you have to be able to believe that every kid can learn, and you don't have to have it all together, because none of us have it all together. But if you're willing to grow and learn, then we're willing to support you. So anyhow, from the leaders to our teachers to our students, there was just, everyone was being trained. And there were times where I would, kind of, I lead a lot through questions. So oftentimes, like, my team would come to me for answers, and, just having the ability to be able to coach other people, build capacity in them. Eventually they end up learning how to critically think and problem solve and make decisions for themselves. And so anyhow, there was a lot of that happens. But what I want to talk about is this, and this is what brought me to the Pavone firm. And now I can clearly articulate it, is that oftentimes right now, just with organizations, period, there's what's called the tokenized hires.
Mm.
Okay. The tokenized hires are particularly when companies bring in people of color, Black, Latino, women, into a leadership position. And you tokenize them. You check the box of saying, hey, look who we brought, right? They fit the description of the type of person that needs to be at that organization. Many of us have the pedigree. Many of us have the results. And what happens is you go through the honeymoon phase. You go through the honeymoon phase of, hey, everybody meet this person. They got a degree from Columbia University, etc. And then what happens is you start to do your job. And you start to lift the hood to the car and you start to point out and say, actually, hey, this right here, having 4 kids to a seat on a bus, everywhere from high schoolers to kindergartners, is unacceptable. We are not living in slavery days. This has to stop. So people are like, oh my God, like, things that are just unheard of, but not unheard of. And it was literally, there was major injustices happening in front of my eyes. Another one is that, I'm sure a lot of people know about this power school system, right? We transitioned districts. Needless to say, there were conversations that as a school principal, I needed to be a part of. I was intentionally being left out of them. Our whole system disappears. Every kid's transcript, all of that, right? So you got kids who just graduated, whose colleges are waiting for their transcripts. You have kids who, are going into their senior year, whatever. You need transcripts in a high school just to be able to function. It is the basics. And all of that disappeared. And we spent months trying to fix something where I went to the superintendent, I went to the state superintendent, and it's like knocking on doors for something that was so simple. Yet, who had to fix that? My team. So that took us away from from being able to coach teachers, from being able to serve students, from our counselors being able to be there. There was a lot of that. And so, of course, when you are that person that is called in to turn around a school, you also got to understand that there's different types of leaders. Some leaders are called to come in, blow it up, bring the right people in, and now you got to go. Right. And I was that person who, and there's a lot of tokenized hires out there. When you start calling out the things in an organization, it makes people feel really uncomfortable. And so the microaggressions begin. They start to undermine you. You start to be left out of these conversations. Point is that regardless of all of that happening, I did have to start a night school program to make up for all the things that happened. I was working a lot of the night school program, and eventually I realized, you know what? I was clear on these are the things that I need as a school principal to be successful. And if I don't receive these, this is the only way I see myself staying in this organization.
Right.
I knew that I was being called to start a firm, to start this company. I never thought that it would be this soon. I thought like it was like a 10-year thing. And I thought, I mean, this is obviously it was one of the hardest decisions, but I would not be able to lead and coach district teams and school teams through a pandemic if I had not been through the crises that I had been through
Mm.
at that time. There's just no way I would be able to do it. So the why I do this is because there are leaders out there who feel like they are alone, who do not have the support that they need. And there's a community of us out there who are doing this work and getting results. And so that's why we do what we do.
I was hanging out this weekend with the OSG fam. So, Dennis and Ra and like fantastic, group of people.
Yeah, they are.
Just super inspirational, that they are groups of principals that are out supporting their students and also, finding ways to make sure that they're taken care of too. Like, you know what I mean? It's to teachers and principals, and nobody's not supposed to be struggling financially and things to that effect. So I love what they create, and that sense of community is just amazing.
It really is amazing. There's so much power in community too, Jamal. Like there's just we shouldn't have to be out here doing this work by ourselves. And sometimes you feel like you're the crazy one, right? Like you feel like, and I remember a lot of those days, like, dang, am I the only one? And then when you start to meet people, Clubhouse was a wonderful thing during
Right.
the pandemic because I think we found so much community.
Right.
I know you asked about the services that we offer.
Yeah.
Happy to share those as well.
Please.
Yeah. So one of the things that in my journey from principalship to building this company, I realized that I had to start with like my identity, right? And serving other women of color, other Black women who were principals going through a lot of the same things. And so one of our signature services is called Solidarity, Healing, and Empowerment. And that was a mainly virtual coaching program, national leadership cohort that started before the pandemic. And it was amazing, not planned, obviously, that when the pandemic hit, our principals, our leaders were like, we've been doing the Zoom thing and the Google Classroom and all this stuff through this program. And just to see the connection and how, I mean, class would be over at 8 and they'd be like, can we just stay on the phone? We just want to on Zoom. And
Right.
it's incredible to see them find power within one another. Healing, right? All of them get a wellness coach, which there's no other program that for school leaders that does that. So that's really cool. We also have a program that is called Bolstering Organizational and Leadership Development. And that is for any leader, men, women. We actually provide this service both in and outside of education. And this is more so for teams and organizations, right? And so we work with teams. They pick an area where they want to focus on. For some people, for some schools, it's like we really need it. Our teachers think their professional development sucks. Like we need help, right? For other people, like we had a district in New Jersey who they wanted us to design a social emotional academy for them this summer for their freshmen. And so we designed a social emotional academy, eliminated suspensions in my high school and integrated a whole mindfulness program in there as well. So yeah, it's just that's what we offer. A lot of it is through one-on-one or one-on-one coaching or group coaching sessions. About 80% of our services are digital, so virtual services, and about 20% are in person. Right now, we're in the season where all of our bold clients have on-site visits. So we do school reviews, where we do school culture and climate visits. We interview teachers, we interview students, we interview parents, just to gauge what's going well, what's not going well right now, and how do we improve like right now, not wait till the end of the year to get results from the state, but what do we need to do now? So that's a little bit of what we do.
So I always think about, I mean, I love when organizations are able to have an outsized impact, based on, who they are. But I think, about scale, because there's the need is so great. There's so many school leaders who need the assistance that you're providing. Is there anything that you're doing as a leader yourself to coach up other leaders to be able to expand the overall platform and expand the impact?
Yeah, so it's funny you asked that. So I've done the first 3 years, we're in year 3 of our company. The first 3 years, I've done a lot of that work behind the scenes and informally. Like, don't charge for it. Call me. I'm going to help you figure out your consulting business. And a lot of leaders that we have coached are business owners now. Now, in terms of our team, we have a team of 25, over 25 advisors all over the country who are currently school principals. They are teachers, they are superintendents. And when we get, like when a district or school hires us, we're able to provide them with those contracts. And like that has a lot to do with our business model. I am the face of the company right now, but my vision and what we are manifesting and creating is just a coalition of people like that. We're the face, we're putting ourselves out on social media, having these live ed chats and all that, but also what we're doing is we're bringing together all of these experts. We're pinpointing like, okay, who's on the field doing this work. And so when we hear from this district and they said that they need this thing, we just, hey, all right, we got this. We need this many people. Who's in? Boom, we're
Right.
gonna train you. He's gonna, even was a part of one of the projects that we had as well, where I think we hired like 30
Yeah.
people to deliver that project. So, and God has placed it on my heart, and in these next couple of months, we are going to be launching an internal community where I'm gonna teach people how I did it. Like, and we're just gonna get this thing done. So go ahead.
I know that's going to be fantastic, because the biggest smile that you've had yet
Yeah.
today came right then and there. Like I felt the whole thing
Yeah.
right then and there. So I can't,
I,
I can't wait for that, because it's necessary, man. Like if I have to say it every podcast, I'll say it every podcast. Education is going to change, because education has to change. Like it's
yeah.
we literally cannot go on this way for much longer. And so for the humans and the spirits who have been
Real.
given and guided to be able to come and positively impact others, because the reality is it's like, if you are in one of these leadership programs, if you have they pay you whatever they pay you, the superintendent gets just a little bit better, the principal gets just a little bit better, two teachers get a little bit better, and then now two kids now that were on their way to ruin are better. Like if that's all that happens, like the job has been done. But we know that that's not what's happening. It's you're helping people to turn around the school, which turns around lots of teachers and students, which is just a powerful force multiplier.
Yeah.
When small amounts of individuals can apply leverage and improve the overall system. So I'm impressed by the work that you've been able to do, and not just from your own mouth, but because we hear, we in these streets, we know what's going on. People let us know that the performing firm is the truth. And so that's why you're here. That's why we wanted to, one of the reasons why we wanted to be able to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank
Can you
you.
go ahead? I'm sorry.
No, I said thank you. I received that. Thank you so much for that.
You're more than welcome. Can you speak to educators who have a desire to move into leadership roles? Any advice for them?
Yeah. Well, number one, there's going to be a lot of open positions. So now is the time to start preparing yourself and positioning yourself. There's a lot of people also who we've been helping, some of our current clients, but then just people, honestly, we do a lot of things just informally in our DM. Someone says,
Yeah.
hey, I need help. We're going to figure out a way to help you out. Right now, it's really about positioning yourself, preparing yourself. What's your value add to leadership? Why are you going into leadership?
Mhm.
It is not about the title. It's not about the title, because this work is too hard, right? Sometimes people look at leadership and they're like, I want to do that, but you don't know, right? The heaviness of the responsibility of that. So start to make sure that you're clear on your why. to understand your value add. And as you go into, if you haven't even spoken to your own leadership and you see yourself moving up within your own school, you need to make that conversation happen, right?
Mm,
Hey, here are the needs that I see. Center kids in your decision. Here are the needs that I see our kids have. Here are the needs of our school community. And here's how I see myself adding value to that.
mm,
I would love to, maybe you need to have some sort of like results or track record. So sometimes it takes you serving outside of your position a little bit to show people that you actually can do what you're telling people you can do, right? I could say, hey, I really think I could add value in culture and add some SEL because I've led some student groups around SEL for our entire grade level. I've designed this blah 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 blah, right? So you have to be clear on what you're bringing to the table. It is not only because you went and got your admin license that now you are ready to move into leadership,
right.
right? And so position yourself, think about your why, and advocate for your school community. I would say those are the biggest things. We are starting a masterclass series in December. It's a 3-part series. When is this coming out?
Probably after that, but maybe we
Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Well,
but maybe we can figure out something. He was in charge of all of that.
okay.
When is the
Got
master
it.
class
It's
though?
in December. So we have a 3-part masterclass series basically coming up, and it's called Walk in Your Power, branding yourself and positioning yourself for your promotion.
Got it.
And so it's all about getting us helping you get clear on your value add, who you are as a leader, you branding and positioning yourself, you being able to negotiate, for your salary, for that promotion that you want. Sometimes it's not about talking your own language. It's also about learning the language that other people speak.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, how do you boss up in an interview? How do you show up like with your whole self and ask very strategic questions? Because sometimes people see a leadership position, they're like, oh my God, I want that position. But have you asked, you are also interviewing the company
Facts.
because you are investing your future career into that company. And if they do not have the capacity to sustain the gifts that you have to give to this world, then that might not be the place for you. And I feel really, really strongly about that because sometimes being in an environment will kill your dream.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you go sit at a school for 3 years that you got all of this energy, particularly like young teachers and stuff. And obviously Eva's a second year teacher, and so I get the rundown daily. If you take you got somebody shiny and energetic, and if you beat that out of them, you may never ever get it back. For any, I know there's not a lot of male educators, but anybody who's listening who understands football, you get a good quarterback come out
Yep.
of college and he just gets sacked and sacked and sacked because of the offensive line. He may never recover from that.
Right.
And
Right.
so the same thing I think happens to teachers. And so leadership obviously needs to, pay very, very, very close attention to that.
Sure.
And if you don't know how to do that, you need to holler at the Pavone firm because
Yes.
they can help show you how to do
Yes.
so.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Um,
And
so
let me just say something about the whole quarterback analogy you just gave too. And like what happens when that quarterback also just goes to the wrong team? Like that team wasn't, but then they go to another team that had coaches, right? That had the environment where they could really thrive. And
yeah,
it's the same concept there.
big facts. And if Eva was here, she would say that what I said was sexist because I made it out like it would just be men. And so I realized it. I'm doing the work, y'all. I am. I'm trying, y'all. I'm trying. She'll love
I
that
love
part.
it. I love
But please let everybody know, one, how to get in touch with you. Two, if there's anything else that you'd like to mention that we might not have, please do so.
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram at the Pavone Firm or on Facebook or on LinkedIn. I think our most engaged community is on Instagram. But you can also find us at www.thepavonefirm.com. We are launching our next wave of cohorts the end of January. And so stay tuned for that. So if you're a leader, leadership team, aspiring leader, make sure you get locked into those programs. Your school gets funding for your culture and climate, for your leadership development, for socio-emotional learning, for adult learning, all of those things. And so that's how you can find us. We want to be able to support you, and I'm excited to continue to grow and impact this work and create space for all of us to go in and bring our best self to this work.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
thank you, Jamal, for this opportunity too, and Eva for bringing me on the podcast.
Absolutely. We're happy you came. So our last question is actually always allowing our interviewer to become an interview I'm the interviewer. So we take the interviewer and we let, I don't know, I'm messing up the language right now. You get to ask the question of us.
I become the interviewer, now interviewee. How many questions can I ask?
You know, shoot, like, you know,
Ah!
we'll see if you start asking hard questions, I can't answer them. You know, then it's just one.
Can you share a little bit about just like what's your leadership and your why?
My leadership and my why. I was a horrible student. Like really just, you know, disrespectful, bad grades, just didn't really care. I was not somebody who thought that anything that they were sharing with me in school, not anything, but most of the things, I was like, I'm not going to need this as an adult. And that's kind of the way I felt. I was wrong in some ways in that some of the structure that you have by doing things in a sequential manner, in a linear fashion, you know, I'm 43 years old and I still struggle, you know, with some of those things. But, you know, you see these books, I haven't read all of them, but I read most of them. I said, I want to learn about this and I want to learn about that and I want to learn about this. And I know that there are lots of other students out there that feel the same way that I am. So I think that we need to find the future of education is personalization. So I think moving in a direction where students get way more of an opportunity to say what they learn, what they engage in, and us finding ways to, if we do need, I'm never going to say academics is not important. I do think that probably more than half of the stuff that we teach now we could just get rid of. But you know, personal opinion, I don't get to change the, you know, the whole system, but I would like to connect with schools in a way where you bring that type of message in, you show that schools are working on, you know, kind of project-based learning and things to that effect. And then all of a sudden, wow, the academic rigor is still happening and students are developing a love of learning. So that's a long way to say, I want people to love learning the way I love learning. Like it opened my mind, it opened my heart, and I'm a better human being as a result of the fact that I love to learn. So I want as many other people around the world to be able to approach things in that manner. And from a leadership perspective, I'm still learning how to do it. If I had a word to use there, I would say kind of vulnerability. You know, I have a willingness to share, you know, hey, here's what I'm good at and here's what I'm terrible at. And you know, like, how do I work with people to mitigate the areas where I'm terrible? And what can I do to allow the areas that I'm good to apply those to helping myself and other people shine?
That's powerful.
Thank you.
Jamal, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Do you believe that students can learn from a teacher that does not love them?
I'm going to probably give this is probably not, you may not expect this answer. I believe that they can learn how to deal with people um, that don't love them, because everybody's not going to love you. So I don't think that we should have teachers in the classroom that don't, you know, love students and that don't believe that they can learn and things to that effect. But the reality is the way that things are set up, there's probably a lot of teachers like that right now. So students are going to interact with those students, with those teachers. So finding methods to have that student recognize, okay, I know she don't care about me, but I'm gonna go ahead and do this to show her, like, allow me to reintroduce myself, kind of thing. So I don't, I try to be mindful about, like, not saying no, they can't, because if I say that, then they're going to believe that. And I don't want anybody to believe in any circumstance that they can't overcome the various different obstacles that are put in front of them. And a teacher that doesn't, you know, love and care about them is an obstacle, but it's just something to overcome.
I love that perspective and that approach to it. How then does a teacher, let's just say that that a student has a teacher, right, that does not love them, right, and that teacher will clearly, maybe say behind closed doors, like, yeah, I don't like this kid, right?
Right. Right.
I can't. And some teachers will, I mean, I have had teachers that say, I can't teach these kids. I can't teach those Black boys. And how do you, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you any thoughts on how do you coach a teacher to be able to teach a child or create a space where that child feels seen?
So I don't know what to do for the teacher who feels that way. I would sit down, have conversations with them. I'm pretty good one-on-one with people, even with people who I disagree with on things, because I'll dig in and try to understand, like, because it doesn't make sense to me that you would, yes, he's like, kids is this. I was a knucklehead, like, so so I get that, that there were
Yeah,
teachers that did not, did I don't I didn't have teachers that didn't like me. They did like me, but they were like, "You were just such a smart aleck." It was a, you know what I mean? It was a whole thing. But so I'm not sure exactly what to tell them. The important component is what you actually, you know what? I'll make a suggestion. And so this is, something that I would do for Eva and I when we would have any, kind of head butt thing that it was hard for me to talk about, hard for her to talk about. I would ask her to write it, write it down. You know what I mean? Like it's Miss whatever your name is, the thing that you said or did to me, yesterday made me feel, this way. You know what I mean? I wonder if if there's something that we can do so that does not happen again. So I think this takes some outside party, because most kids are not just going to come up with this. So it takes another teacher or a mentor or a parent or somebody to share with the kid, here's a strategy to potentially, like, touch this other teacher. Because I can imagine that teacher getting this letter and starting to giggle a little bit, like, this little guy, like, you know what I mean? Okay, maybe he's not so bad. So I think that we collectively, have to recognize that those people are in our classrooms. And if all we do is call them terrible teachers and say, get out, they probably deserve that, but it's not an effective strategy. That's not what's going to actually make them better. So, I got to probably, true utopian thing, like, everybody can be reached in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But I feel like I have to carry that with me in order for me to try, like, for me to make an attempt at people. I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, no, that's real. I appreciate that. I do think that I think teachers who do struggle to see kids, right, and love them or like them, right, they have to have like strategies in place, to your point, whether it's communication strategies, they have to have strategies to be able to allow that child to be seen and heard and valued, because oftentimes what happens is it's a missed opportunity to really, again, like, you said, like, there were things that you were interested in learning that you were not taught. And had someone taken a little bit of extra time to say, Jamal, what are you interested in learning? Like, how much that could really change the game. And so it's those strategies. Like, I might not love you like my own child, but there is something to be really said, even with adults. If I'm the principal and I have a teacher in my building who is really hard to love,
Right.
right? Right.
Right.
And so it's like, how do I find a way to bring out, to see you? What do you like to do? Where's your value add, and where do you see yourself, adding value, and attempting to create an avenue for you to bring that out? So anyways, I'm just always interested to hear people's answers
No, I appreciate
on
those are all great questions. I may have to, implement those into the podcast somewhere.
that.
Thank you so much, Noemi. We appreciate you so much, man. We look forward to being able to, do work together in the future. There's some schools that I know need your services, and maybe I need to start making, some
Please
introductions. So
do. Please do. We have an affiliate marketing program as well. So when you make a referral and, with that school or organization enrolls, and, we pay you some money for the connection. So as long as it doesn't, as long as it's within policy and all of that.
definitely. Like, I'm on a school board. I wouldn't take it for my local school district.
Right, all right. You can't do that. Right.
I'm making sure that is, like,
There
right
you
now we could go back to it and say,
go.
look, I
Right.
know that I couldn't do that. So
Exactly. Right, right. But all those clubhouse people you met in other districts,
big
you
facts,
know.
big facts,
But
big
Jamal,
facts.
thank you for your time. I know you have a lot going on, and I just appreciate this space that you have created to allow me to share my story and the work that we do. So thank you.
Definitely appreciate you. Thank you. And that's another episode of Black on Black Education Podcast.